Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bitcoin Basics podcast. I am your host, Faris, flying solo today. And the date today is the 20th of March, 2023. The price of Bitcoin is $27,900 at time of recording. The block height is 781,586. And $1 will get you, that's $1 US will get you 3,584 Satoshis today. I just had a really fascinating conversation with Christopher Pavlesic, and he is hosting Australia's first Bitcoin-only conference that's happening in Sydney in 3 weeks. A bit more than 3 weeks, April 15th in Sydney. So check out bitcoinalive.io. Chris talks about this on the show, what they're doing. And Chris is an OG, almost an OG Bitcoiner, but he's been around for a while now. And he's been involved in mining. He's involved in digital sovereignty. So we had a lot of things to talk about. I was expecting to have a short conversation about the conference, but we ended up talking for about an hour about digital sovereignty and Bitcoin mining as well. So these are topics that have been prevalent and topical at the moment. We are getting requests from people to talk about these things. And just remember, guys, always go to bitcoinbasics.help and we can answer any questions that you have on the air. But for now, I am going to flip over to myself and Chris.
We have a brand new podcast. Visit myprivacy.help to subscribe. Did you know you can completely control your personal information without relying on a third party? Faris, Gordon, and industry experts explain how you can reclaim control of your data, your privacy, your life. Visit myprivacy.help.
All right, guys, I'm here with Christopher Pavlesic. Thank you, Chris, very much for joining us. And I was having a look at your LinkedIn profile, and you're involved in quite a few Bitcoin projects. But if you don't mind, I'll get you to tell our audience about your Bitcoin origin story.
Sure. Thanks for having me here, Faris. It's nice to have a chat with you. It's always fun talking Bitcoin. It's my passionate hobby, so it's really easy to talk about. But yeah, I've been loosely involved with Bitcoin since sort of 2012, but sort of I don't really kind of take it seriously until about 2015, 2016, where I with a group of friends, a group of best friends, actually started a company called CoinStop, which still operates today as we speak. But it was the first hardware wallet reseller in Australia. So we're trying to find ways to secure our Bitcoins in 2016, and we came across hardware wallets. There weren't too many options back then, but Trezor and the early models of the ledger devices were kind of around, and we realized we couldn't find anywhere to buy them. And so that kind of spurred the idea of, hey, maybe there's something here. Maybe there are other people who also are struggling to find these things. Maybe we can start a business. And so we kind of did. And that was my sort of foray into the whole entrepreneurial road that I've taken now for the last sort of six or so years. But that really excited me. We kind of struck gold, or struck Bitcoin, so to speak, with our timing and first mover advantage. And we learned a lot, about business, about the market, about a lot of things. As you do when you dive into the deep end, you kind of have to learn to swim pretty quickly. That really kind of sparked something within me. I think it was what I was sort of looking for throughout my entire life, was like that, to work for myself, to build things, to solve problems. Historically, I come from a mechanical engineering background. So I used to work in big factories, running big machines. So CoinStop kind of pushed me into it. I actually broke my leg in 2017, playing footy when I was living down in Melbourne. And it was at that moment I was like, well, I guess I can't work because I have a broken leg, and I've been told to stay off it for 9 weeks. All I'm going to do is just invest my entire time into CoinStop and seeing where this thing goes. And yeah, I never turned back. I told myself I'd never go back. So I'm all in at this point. And luckily it's worked out okay. Through that, I got involved with the community side of things a lot in Melbourne. So I was running the local Bitcoin meetups in Melbourne for a few years. I then hassled a few people and got a job at an exchange, and then kind of have worked everywhere in and around the space ever since.
Wow. So who told you, or how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
Yeah. I don't know the exact moment I first learned about Bitcoin. My memory is pretty bad. So I'm sure there was something, but I have a few memories. Obviously, like, you know, I grew up and was a bit of a sort of open-minded free thinker. Maybe you could even say conspiracy theorist. Just curious mind, I guess. And so I, you know, growing up with the internet had all this information at your fingertips, and YouTube and all these sort of things were starting to like really take off, and you could acquire sort of any sort of information you wanted about any topics. So I think just being like open-minded like that and curious, it was a matter of time before I stumbled across Bitcoin. Some of my earliest memories, you know, of hearing about sort of Silk Road and the use case of Bitcoin through early Silk Road days. So, you know, 2011, 2012. I thought that was really interesting. But like many people back then, that's all they really knew when it came to Bitcoin. There was no one was looking at it as an investment or an asset class. It was just a form of payment on this dark net website place. And so I thought that was kind of interesting and cool. And so I loosely followed that and what happened with Ross and all that sort of stuff over the years. And then and that's where there was a bit of a lull. Like I kind of fell out of that and then came back to it in 2016. And so I didn't actually even read the white paper in 2012. Again, the term blockchain or any of these things, I just didn't know. I was just like, oh, cool. It's like PayPal, but it's for the dark net. You know, it's just magic internet money, as everyone refers to it. So it wasn't until 2016 where I picked up the white paper and read that and then thought, oh, wow, I wish I'd done that 4 years sooner. So I had friends that were mining Bitcoin. And so, you know, I'd go to their place and have a look at all their big CPU towers and graphics cards and stuff, and would always say, you know, what's going on here? And then they'd explain to me, hey, I'm mining Bitcoin. And I actually remember going to a friend's place, and he's one of the friends in the group that kind of is always at the forefront of what's happening with computers. He always builds rigs and stuff like that. So it was no surprise he was mining Bitcoin. But we went to his house one time and I saw all these towers. Like, there's no way you need like 10 towers to like play games. He goes, nah, I'm mining Bitcoin. And, you know, we spent all night talking about it. And I was so fascinated. I left there and said to all the other friends that were there who were also, you know, hearing this for probably the first time, you know, why don't we do something similar? Why don't we like spend $1,000 and, you know, build some mining rigs or buy some mining rigs? Or, you know, we didn't know what we were doing. But $1,000 to us as 18-year-olds was a lot of money. I was earning $8.50 an hour, $300 a week as a first-year apprentice. So, you know, that's 3 weeks at least of my wages. And back then, you know, you're obviously spending it on petrol and going out and all sorts of stuff. So you're probably not saving a whole lot of money. So yeah, you know, that was my near miss of getting into Bitcoin mining super early. But I didn't. But, you know, others did, and many of us share a similar story with near misses. But yeah, those are some of my earliest memories of Bitcoin, I think. And I sort of, like I said, took it more seriously a few years down the track in 2015, 2016 when I picked up the white paper, and then, you know, that opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah, Bitcoin is a humble journey to go through. Yeah, my journey is very similar to yours, and lucky for me, I had Gordon, who unfortunately is not. Who's unavailable today, comes from a computer science background. So he was able to explain things to me. And I come from an international relations economics background. So that's where I had my light bulb moment, appreciating Bitcoin from an economics perspective. But it's funny, like when you get your head around the basics for Bitcoin, then you start to think of other things. And you mentioned Bitcoin mining. And this is something that our last few episodes have actually been a lot about Bitcoin mining. Because we found that as new people come into this space, they're like, okay, I bought Bitcoin, now what? and mining is the next thing they want to get into. Now, can I mention Alpha Hashrate?
Yeah, I mean, mining is something I'm very much interested in as well. I shared that story about the near miss almost 10 years ago, and here I am now trying to work on a startup for Bitcoin mining. It's a little bit of a full circle journey. But yeah, I think it's an extremely fascinating aspect of Bitcoin, and there are of course many, but Bitcoin mining and the proof of work algorithm is one of the key pieces of the puzzle, and has taken me better part of 10 years to get to this level of understanding. And I'm by no means a Bitcoin mining expert. I'm just, like many Bitcoiners, curious and read about it and listen to podcasts about the topics and speak with other Bitcoiners about them. But yeah, Alpha Hashrate is kind of, so it's a startup of mine that I sort of started working on last year. Almost about 12 months ago, actually, maybe about 10 months ago. The idea being I wanted to get back into Bitcoin mining, but I didn't particularly have all of the resources and infrastructure required to sort of, I guess, be somewhat competitive. So I was looking for like a hosting type service where I could basically have it all handled for me. And there aren't too many in Australia. The big one many people know is probably like Compass Mining. They've been quite popular over the last couple of years, and I came across them and thought, this is interesting. I like their model. I like the idea. It was exactly the service I was looking for, to be completely honest with you. But I saw some little bits of things that I didn't quite like, and so I never pulled the trigger on it. And I had friends who have, and now regret that. So I'm glad I dodged that bullet. And that's, I think, one of the skills I've developed over the years is being able to kind of know when to deploy and when not to deploy. If something is a bit sus or doesn't quite fit my, I guess, checklist of things before I get interested in something. So I luckily avoided that, but I do like the model. And so I thought about it for a while and looked around, and there wasn't really anyone doing anything like it in Australia. So I thought, okay, that was one of the problems I didn't like, was the fact that, my hardware and my hash rate wasn't, geographically close to me, and in places where I couldn't access, I had no control over. So that's why I wanted something in Australia. And yeah, turns out it doesn't particularly exist. Not exactly in that fashion, at least. So I thought, all right, here we are again, trying to solve my own problems, like I did with CoinStop, buying the hardware wallets, or not being able to buy hardware wallets, and starting a company. I thought, oh, maybe there's something here. So yeah, started working on it. I had some interesting contacts in the industry. A friend of mine runs some energy stuff here in Australia, over in South Australia, and he kind of knows his infrastructure and his energy very well. And I know Bitcoin quite well, I think, reasonably well at least. I've been selling Bitcoin stuff for the better part of 6 years now, so kind of know the market a little bit. At least I hope to. So I thought maybe if I can convince him, there might be something there. So we started working on something, but then last year, long story short, the winter was horrible here in Australia. Energy prices went up across the board everywhere. Volatility, it was nuts. It was the worst time possible to try to start a Bitcoin mining company. But some of the groundwork has been laid. So it's not as if it's been completely abandoned. I've just got my hands in other pies at the moment. So yeah, the whole thing with the energy prices and then me kind of getting involved with some other startups meant that this kind of has taken a back seat. But yeah, I haven't closed the door completely on it, because Bitcoin mining I still want to be able to do it, right? I still have that problem I need to solve. So I'll just have to figure out when I can get around to doing that.
Look, that is the next, I'd say, trend to happen. Bitcoin miners have been squeezed in this last bear market. They're over leveraged, from what I've heard. But no, we interviewed two founders of two different companies, SAS Mining, and the other is the Mining Future. And SAS Mining is based in the United States, where they grab the methane coming out of oil rigs and using that methane to mine Bitcoin. The Mining Future, these are a couple of guys that are looking for cheap electricity around the world. So they've got miners based in Dubai, Argentina, several other places. But same thing. People would just go, I want to mine Bitcoin, but I don't want to, grab a couple of ASIC miners, connect them myself. So I really do think there's a need for that business model. But it's hard work for the person launching it.
It is. Yeah. And I get excited and, often find myself doing too many things. So sometimes I have to be a little bit reasonable in my approach. I only have so many hours in the day. But yeah, you touched on some of the problems for sure. Like, you get an ASIC and plug it in at home and okay, maybe you know how to configure it and get it up and running after watching some guides or whatever and spending a few hours tinkering. But then you got to deal with the heat. You've got to deal with the noise. It's always got to be up. It's not just a plug and play. It's not like a home modem or something like that. It does require some level of maintenance and upkeep. And yeah, the thing that kills it for a lot of people for residential mining is the noise and the heat. Like it's unbearable. If you've ever heard an ASIC miner, if you don't have a basement or a garage or somewhere where you can either soundproof it or just physically move the noise away from you, you're not going to have a very happy life having to live with that noise. So one of the things that we wanted to do with Alpha Hashrate was move into immersion mining. And so that's the kind of the specialty, so to speak, that we're looking to tap into is, I believe that immersion mining is kind of the way forward.
So when you say immersion, is that immersion in water? So you mean?
Well, not water, because water and electricity are not things that mix well, but it is a non-conductive oil that you physically dunk the ASICs in. So this is what we're working on, building containers with custom tanks that can fit up to like 52 ASIC machines fully dunked under this non-conductive oil. And the non-conductive oil is just recycled through a cooling element. And then the oil's gone back in. So it basically regulates the ASICs much more comfortably and safely. It just because heat is the big thing, right? Like heat is what deteriorates the chips and the cards, and that's what causes the problems. So you remove the heat by dunking it in this oil that you can do a better job at removing that heat and extracting it. But then you also don't get dust collection. That's another one of the big problems. And these big factories is just you're blowing all this stuff around and dust goes everywhere. So that's not a good mix either. So it solves that problem. And then lastly, the noise. When you stick them under in a tank with oil, there's no requirement for the fan anymore. And the fan is what produces largely all of the noise, right? Because the fans are used to cool the chips so they don't overheat. So if you remove the fan and dunk it in the oil, then you've removed the noise. So it's kind of a win-win-win across the board, in my opinion. But it's a bit newer and not as many people are doing it. But you see it with the manufacturers, they're kind of building in liquid cooling to their machines now instead of fans. And we've seen this with gaming PCs and workstations have liquid cooled options, fan cooled options. And, I'm sure there are people that sit in both camps of those. But yeah, I think immersion mining has its benefits. And right now there isn't really anyone offering sort of a B2C solution for someone that wants to take advantage of immersion mining but doesn't have the technical know-how to create a tank or to dip this thing in some non-conductive oil. And, it's the specialty skills. So that was kind of what I was working on. And I would still like to kind of get back to it, like I mentioned. But right now I'm way too busy with other things, which I'm sure we'll touch on shortly.
I think this is actually the problem for Bitcoiners now, because when you first get into Bitcoin, you're learning about everything. And we actually tell people who are first learning about Bitcoin, who want to invest in Bitcoin, you don't need to know the intricacies about mining. And I compare it to getting on a plane. You know the basics of how a plane works, but would you only get on a plane if you understood how, open up the hood and look in there? And if you don't understand what's going on, you still fly. So I kind of say the same thing about mining is we'll talk about mining. You don't need to understand mining to buy Bitcoin, but it's great that in the industry now that when you first get into Bitcoin, you kind of have to learn about all this kind of stuff. But now you can actually devote a full-time career to one aspect. Or I'm going to set up a cold storage device. That's a full-time business. I'm going to set up a Bitcoin mining company. That's a full-time business. It's great that we're now seeing these industries start and bloom around Bitcoin. And yeah, that idea is, I think, is a really good one. And I think you'd have a lot of people keen to invest, because this is what we found is people go, I want to invest in Bitcoin mining, but for all the problems you just said, they don't have it in their own home.
Yeah. I like I said, I'm not especially unique. So I think largely most of the problems I come across, other people face too. Again, like the CoinStop, we wanted a hardware wallet. Turned out thousands of other Aussies wanted hardware wallets, and we made a business from it. So yeah, I'm using myself as like a case study of the average, consumer, so to speak. Obviously the range varies, but when I think, okay, this problem exists for me, I'm not that special. I'm pretty average. So there must be other people that also suffer from this problem. Let me see if I can figure out a problem.
Yeah, that's the first sign they say of a new business venture. If you're feeling frustrated, someone else somewhere is, so find a solution for them.
Yeah. Oh, and you first look to the market. Does anyone else solve it? And I looked, and there was a few, but no one in Australia. And so I thought, okay, well, now I can probably work on an idea here, and maybe it's got some legs. Hopefully, yeah, like I said, hopefully I can get back to it, because I do think other people probably would find value from such a service. But yeah, now, like you said, it's a full-time job.
I want to bring this up before I forget. The reason I actually got in touch with you was because you are organizing a Bitcoin conference in Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, which is also a full-time job.
Oh yeah, I've done events, that event management. Oh man, yeah. All right, so tell us about that. Nothing of this scale before. Like like I mentioned earlier, I've run some meetups and stuff like that over the years, pretty much in all of the states that I've lived in. So I've been sort of going up and around the east coast of Australia over the last 6 or 7 years, living in Victoria, living in Queensland, and now back in New South Wales. I've been involved with the meetup community in each of those places, and if they haven't existed, then I've built it myself and started a meetup. But yeah, a meetup is very different to a full-blown conference. It's it's several steps up. But again, I've been to a lot of Bitcoin conferences, or perhaps not a lot, but a few, and they've all been overseas. So, and that's great. I love traveling. Yeah. It's fantastic to go experience new cultures and meet new people. But at the end of the day, I'd love to go to a Bitcoin conference in Australia once a year as well. Last couple of years, I've had to fly to the States or fly to El Salvador or Europe to be able to get a Bitcoin conference fix. There just isn't anything in this entire region. There's crypto, blockchain, there's all these other conferences, but I'm talking specifically Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. I was setting one up in New Zealand. Yeah, I was setting one up in New Zealand, and then COVID happened. I had to cancel the whole thing. I had speakers and everything lined up, and so I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of work. And so we started on this idea sort of around, I think, August, September last year. There was some sort of discussions as they happen in these Telegram groups, in a Bitcoin Sydney group here. And yeah, we kind of branched off and continued the discussion. And then turns out, there's a couple of us left standing at the end of it that were kind of serious about actually putting this on, or at least going to the next level of seriousness, whatever that looked like back then. Here we are 6 months on. We're 26 days, I think, away from the conference. It's been an enormous amount of work involved, but
so give us some of the details for people who want to join in, who want to come. Where can they buy tickets? What's the conference called? Where's it being hosted? Yeah, sure.
So the conference is called Bitcoin Alive. All the information can be found on our website, www.bitcoinalive.io. You can also follow us on the socials. We're most active, I'd say, probably on Twitter, but we cross-post on Facebook and Instagram as well for anyone on those platforms. But essentially, like I was saying earlier, I was kind of getting over going to the Northern Hemisphere every year just to get the Bitcoin conference fixed. So looked around, doesn't exist. There's lots of great meetups in pretty much all of the major capital cities of Australia, and I've been to pretty much all of them, and they're great. But, they don't scale up. They get 30, 100 people at them, and over the course of 12 months, maybe you'll see, 20 or 30% of the Bitcoiners that are going around and presenting in the country. But, no one's bringing all that energy together in one room over 1 day or 2 days and seeing what happens. So that's kind of the first mission, is just bring all of the Bitcoiners in this country together in the same room at the same time to see what happens, because it's never happened before. We're so wide. I mean, that's kind of the nature of Australia. We're a big country. So what happens in Perth doesn't really get discussed in Melbourne. I mean, not even like Sydney and Melbourne, like they're very much independent communities, and that's great. But they're all great in their own right. But wouldn't it be great to have them all come together as well once a year? So that's our first goal, is just to do that, because I think that alone will be amazing for the several hundreds of Bitcoiners that come. Nowhere before have you been able to get this level of quality Bitcoiners in the same place talking about their specific expertise in Bitcoin. So it's going to be fantastic from that regard. I'm really looking forward to it. And what I've realized through putting this on is we've got a lot of really good Bitcoin talent in Australia. Yeah. Like I knew we did, but when I actually got into the weeds of, okay, who are going to get for speakers, where are they going to come from? It was like hearing about people. I thought I knew everyone. Like I've, been around for a while, not in sort of a egotistical way. Like I'm not special at all, but like it's a small country. It's a small community. I didn't think I'd be finding out that the like head of Lightning at Blockstream lives in the country. Like I had no idea that happened. And here we are, like finding out there's like a multiple of these like really high level developers living in our own backyard, building like some of the most, cutting edge stuff when it comes to Bitcoin. And it's just wow.
That tall poppy syndrome in Australia doesn't do it many favors.
So it's been humbling in that regard. And I'm really excited to be able to put this together. Cause I think, again, I'm not unique. I'm sure other Bitcoiners are also wanting to get together and chat about Bitcoin, because we're all crazy about this thing and we love talking about it. So I'm hoping everyone's going to have an amazing time. We put a lot of work into the schedule, into the content, into making sure that, it fits the Bitcoin ethos as much as it can. We've all been to conferences before where there's scams and all sorts of nonsense being promoted. And, we've made a very conservative effort to ensure that doesn't get in to our conference. If you want that, you can find those places where you can get your fixes on those things, but we want to focus on the signal. And so we've chosen to remove the noise, and the noise is all those crypto folk and shitcoiners and blockchainers and Web3ers and all those people. Those discussions can take place elsewhere. We want to just solely focus on Bitcoin, like you said yourself, is a full-time job. And that, that's just one aspect of it, whether it's mining and energy infrastructure, or if it's payments and merchant adoption. Like you could spend hours talking about each of those things. Yeah. So we don't have time to be talking about smart contracts and DeFi. And if that stuff is of usefulness, it will probably be built on Bitcoin. And then we can talk about it at that point, right? Until then, I kind of look at it largely like an experiment.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things will fail and crumble and burn. Perhaps a couple of good ideas will come to the forefront of that. And if they're good, they'll probably be built on Bitcoin.
Oh, you're talking to the preaching to the choir here. Our Bitcoin audience knows that in our 200 plus episodes, we've been Bitcoin only. And we've never plugged anything else. So Bitcoin Alive, Saturday, 15th of April in Sydney, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, cool. And still tickets available?
Tickets are available. Yep, we're on to second release tickets now. They'll be available right up until the event. Obviously, the sooner you grab a ticket, the cheaper it'll be. There's one more price rise between now and the event. And we'll communicate that so everyone knows well in advance. Excuse me. But April 15th, full day event. The doors will open around about 9:30. Content will start about 10. We'll have a main stage, a side stage, an exhibitor area, a beer garden. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. Like I said, this is several steps above your local Bitcoin meetup at an RSL or a pub or something. And, those are good and those have their place. And we want to be able to find a place for something like this where we have slightly, a bit more, I don't want to say professional because we're Bitcoiners, but like organized, I guess is perhaps a better word. But, we're going to have full AV and it's a really nice venue and it's, people are paying for this. So we want to make sure it's of high quality. And that's why we've put together this program that, like I said, I don't think anyone's ever seen anything like this in the country. You could probably go to every meetup around the country and over course of 12 months and not get this level of content. And this can be done in 6 hours in one place without having to really get up. So, anyone looking to learn about Bitcoin, this would be the place to do it. You're not going to learn everything in one day, of course. We've all spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours, diving into this, and we still probably don't know that much. I'm talking about myself largely here. I've spent tens of thousands of hours and I'm still learning. But this will be an awesome boost for anyone who's curious or anyone that perhaps hasn't had the time, because you can't fabricate time, you just have to go through it and live it and do the hours and do I call it the tuition fee, the time and energy spent learning about Bitcoin. You just have to do it if you want to understand it completely. In the future, there'll be people that won't need to because they'll just use the apps and the front ends of everything, and like they do with the internet these days. Like you were saying, no one knows how a plane works. No one knows how the internet works. It just does work, and they interact with it through email and websites and all sorts of stuff. Bitcoin will probably have that point in time where it just works and no one's thinking about it.
The Lindy network effect will get there where people will just buy it on an app and not even know about it. I mean, we started a Bitcoin education company and, we would have made fortunes if we just launched an ICO in 2017 or if we just help people with trading shitcoins, but now we want to be long-term education. And, you have to learn about so much to learn about Bitcoin. You have to appreciate macroeconomics. You have to appreciate, cryptography, computer engineering, and like you said, I mean, I spent 4 hours a day for months, probably a year and a half actually, before I could explain Bitcoin to someone in under 10 minutes. And even then you struggle.
Yeah. It's quite the rabbit hole to go down. A lot of people kind of perhaps have this real high level surface view of what they think Bitcoin is. Oh, it's money or it's investment or something like that. You can like stocks or something. But like once you like go below the ground and you realize where all the roots go, like there's so many facets that, like you touched on. I'd add a number more, like mathematics, psychology, thermodynamics. There's a lot of things Bitcoin, a lot of disciplines Bitcoin touches on, and there's no way you can expect someone to understand them all. But if there are parts that are fascinating to you, then those are the areas that you should spend your time. So if you're interested in making money, then look at it as an investment. But if you're interested in freedom, then there's certainly ways that Bitcoin can be used as a freedom tool. So like really kind of have to morph it to whatever suits your personality and your interests.
Well, one of those rabbit holes that you mentioned, which we've actually had to launch a separate podcast devoted to this, and it's something I know you're involved in, is online security and privacy. We've had to launch the myprivacy.help podcast because we just found some people getting into Bitcoin are going, what's next? They want to mine Bitcoin, but then they're like, oh, hang on, but what about my online privacy? Tell me about am I getting this right? The OPTF Foundation?
Yeah, that is correct. I actually no longer work there. That was a previous startup. But yeah, the OPTF is basically a non-for-profit foundation that I started in 2018, devoted to building privacy-focused software. So that's like definitely another thing that I'm interested in. So obviously security, doing with what I do with CoinStop. But privacy is something I think is really important as well, especially digital privacy. There's a kind of people respect physical privacy largely. If you close the door at the toilet, no one sort of peeks underneath or sticks their head over the top and said, "Oh, what are you doing in there?" Like they respect when they see the doors engaged, that means people want to do something private. But the minute you sort of take that online, it's as if that sort of level of understanding and respect gets thrown out the window. If you say, "Hey, I just want to browse the internet privately," you're just automatically branded as some sort of criminal, or you've got something to hide, or you're doing something wrong. It's just weird how like we've worked this relationship physically, but we haven't figured it out digitally yet. And so, I've been basically trying to educate people about privacy and help build privacy tools that help that too. But I no longer work at the OPTF as of sort of last year. I stepped away from that project and moved on to different things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, something definitely very close to my heart is digital privacy and making sure people, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, especially if you're taking control of your financial, with Bitcoin by, holding your own keys and all that sort of stuff, which is what I highly advocate for. Then, you should really be sort of doing as much as you can, or at least thinking about your digital identity footprint as well. Yeah. It's talked a little bit about in the white paper. There's a section on privacy. But yeah, it's one of those things that people typically don't care about until it's too late. So, there's been some great recent examples, probably the most notable one, maybe the Optus hack of the last few months. Everyone was up in arms when their data was taken and stolen and sold and whatnot. But, the day before, no one cared that Optus had all their data. So like what changed? Well, they got wrecked. And so that woke everyone up. But, this is happening at every single company, essentially. Every service that you've probably signed up for online, you've given your mobile number, your ID, your name, your email address, your residential address. Yep. I actually, I'm quite passionate about this stuff, and I actually think KYC does more harm than good. I actually think it's a net negative. And these Optus hacks are perfect examples of asking telecommunication companies to become security experts, and then finding them when they fail to be that. Well, it's not their core business. Their core business is not keeping people's data secure and not leaking them. Their core business is selling telecommunication products and services. So, and this is just one example. You think of anywhere now that you've signed up to, you've given them some form of ID. Is their core business to keep that ID secure? Well, probably not, unless it's a security company itself, which there are a few of. And even then, many of them still get hacked. So,
I remember seeing a tweet. This is obviously a few years ago before he passed away, but John McAfee tweeted, "I've been hacked."
He was a bit of a lunatic towards the end there, but very successful with what he did with McAfee antivirus and whatnot. But it's these events are eye openers for people and go, "Oh, maybe I should take it a bit more seriously," because I didn't realize. Calling the Optus thing a hack is almost glorifying it as well. They literally left the back door open.
It was, yeah. We had an episode devoted just to that. It was insane.
Yeah. It was pretty terrible.
No, I like your analogy of the toilet door. That's one we've used before. And like you say, people have this. Oh, it's just too hard. It's just too hard for me to do something about. So this is what we're trying to do: simplify things where we show people, or not show them, but actually help them set up a VPS. And we're even helping people set up graphene on their on phones, smartphones, so stuff like that. Yeah. It's one of those things where you need the will to do it first.
100%. You need to, it needs to be your decision that I am doing this. If someone's shoving down graphene in your throat, you just be like, oh, this is too hard. Like you got to know that there's going to probably be some shortcomings compared to your previous experience using perhaps like a Google phone or an iPhone or something. But you're doing it with a specific reason, right? To increase your privacy and secure your data. So I use this other analogy. It's like a sliding scale of convenience at one end and security at the other. And it's up to you to determine where you want to position yourself on that scale. So if you want your life to be completely convenient, then you slide it all the way down to the convenience level, and you sign in with Google, you Facebook log into everything. You're just a slave to every of those services, right? But your data is just being completely siphoned out to the whole internet, and once it's on there, it's almost impossible to unwind. But
we've explained
most people,
times,
I think most people, if shown like that as that one end of the spectrum, they'd go, "Oh, I'd probably want to move a little bit closer towards the secure end of the spectrum." If you go all the way to the other end, then it's crazy. It's like you don't have any internet connected devices. Everything is analog. Like it's perhaps no way to live. Yeah, it's perhaps no way to live for most people. So you've got to find that sweet spot for you. I can't determine that for you. Like
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you enjoy the fact that you can share photos with your friends and family on Facebook very conveniently because everyone's got kids, and so you're willing to make that sacrifice by providing them with your data. Because, as they say, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. And Facebook is a great example of that, where you're not paying for it. So you are very much the product, and you're being advertised to, and you're being bidded off to, the highest bidder. But people don't really know this, I think, as well.
I think people are starting to wake up little by little. And it's funny to me, like government policies since 2008, have been the biggest promoters for Bitcoin. And we saw what happened in Canada a couple of years ago. I was listening on the radio today that 171 banks around the world have gone bust in the last 2 weeks. So all the things I'm reading are positive for Bitcoin, and the same thing with Optus, MetaBank Private, all this stuff, even LastPass, all the stuff happening there is positive for online security and privacy. So I think people are going, okay, this is what they're doing. Where do I go to now? And it will be the sovereign individual, which encompasses financial sovereignty and the digital footprint sovereignty as well. So yeah, I think it's the very beginning of this a decentralized society.
Yeah, I mean, and you're spot on. Like each time these sort of big flash events happen, it wakes up a few people. It gets them sort of kicked into gear and starting to think about, oh, okay, maybe I should be protecting myself against X, Y, and Z. At some point, it's going to be the big catastrophic. Everyone suffers. Lots of people think maybe it's soon. I don't know. Like, I don't want to be pessimistic. I've been thinking that it's going to be catastrophic for about 5 years. And it whilst you look around and it's pretty bad, like you touched on, 100+ banks closing, there's people making some outrageous claims at the moment that maybe this is the final sort of the final blow for the US dollar or for the fiat type standard. I've been listening to the Bitcoin Standard again. Great book. Highly recommend anyone that's interested in the history of it all to have a listen to that or have a read. Awesome stuff in there. But like maybe it's going to happen. I've always been under the impression that's probably going to be in my lifetime. So I could still be 60 years away and still be in my lifetime if I'm living to that age. But it's not looking good at the moment, that's for sure. And you're right, it's very much all free advertising for Bitcoin. If you recall where Satoshi started it all, writing that message in Block 1 about the New York Times 2008 bank run, bank collapse. We are 15 years later, and it's like, oh my God, you couldn't be more the same, if not 10 times worse, perhaps. And Bitcoin's still here; it's still doing the exact same thing that it did almost 15 years ago.
Yeah, whenever I do a Bitcoin talk, I always bring that up, the Exchequer headline. And to me, Bitcoin is, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Yep. spot on.
So it's when Bitcoin was released, to me, is just as important as what Bitcoin is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful. I don't even know what to call it. Like I always say, like I'm not into like fine art or anything like that, but I imagine, someone who's perhaps lived their entire life devoted to fine pieces of historical art, that when they, go to the Louvre for the first time and visit, and they, they have this overwhelming, just emotional, like, oh, it's so beautiful and everything that I've worked for. And that's kind of how I feel when I think about Bitcoin. Like, it's incredible. It's like the most beautiful creature. And this is part of the reason why we named Bitcoin Alive is because I have this, and I'm not the only one, but, I often think about Bitcoin being this living, breathing creature, this organism. And there's some great writings from people much smarter than me talking about this in greater depths. But, it really does show quite similarities to like biology. You look around and you see all the beautiful biology and you subscribe to sort of natural selection. I kind of see a lot of similarities and traits shared between the two ideas. And so Bitcoin's had literally everything thrown at it over the course of 15 years, like governments trying to ban it, everyone, the media, like investment professionals saying it's a scam, just you name it. It's had everything thrown at it. And where is it today? It's as strong as ever. It's not just hanging on or like sort of relevant. It's literally as strong as ever. Hash rate is through the roof. It's like shining at the time that it's meant to be shining. Like it's living and breathing. It's like no matter what anyone does, literally anyone, it cannot be stopped. I can't stop it. You can't stop it. It would take, I guess, everyone getting together to stop it. But like humans haven't gotten along for a long time. So I can't see us ever getting together to agree on it. But
one of the reasons I love it, it is beautiful. And I've spoken about this before where, there's so much to appreciate about Bitcoin. And what you touched on earlier was, it is to me, probably the last, what's the word I'm looking for? The last depugging that we needed in society. Cause we needed the separation of church and state, happened in the 17th century. Separation of church and state, that took place. But then we had wealth could only be created by a few. So, when during the Industrial Revolution, the English allowed anyone to buy land. You used to not be able to buy land. Anyone could buy real estate. That created a middle class. And now we still have this thing where money is still controlled by the elite and the wealthy. The decisions that they're making do not impact them, but they impact everyone else. And we're seeing.
I agree. The separation of money from state is very much the battle. The battle
That's
of modern
what it is.
Times.
Yeah. So to me, this is the last thing towards freedom of capitalism. Capitalism is not a bad thing. We've just never actually seen it tried because cronyism gets in the way. To me, this is probably the last thing towards a free and open society is separating the money and allowing it to be free and equitable. So that's where Bitcoin comes in. And like you say, it can't be stopped at this stage.
Nothing even comes close. Like, there are 20, 30,000 other cryptocurrencies and they're not even in the same discussion. Like there's like the big leagues and then there's like your weekend, children's sport. And that's what they're all playing. And Bitcoin's in the big leagues.
We've said this before. Check the coin market cap every 2 years. Which coins are still up there? Maybe Ethereum and Ripple. And Ripple's just a spreadsheet that's about to collapse. Ethereum's going to collapse at any point. All the others keep cycling through. They can't even stay in the top 10. So,
Very much so, yeah. I've been around a few cycles now and, you see the top 10s and they always switching and changing with whatever the new flavor of the month is. It's just, I've gotten sick of it all and kind of, that's why I'm like very, very sharply focused on Bitcoin now because, after 10 years of me going around the circus and checking out all the amusements, like I come back and Bitcoin's still there offering the same thing. And it's just like, okay, cool. Like this is the thing that can be trusted and is of value in amongst all the colors and loud noises.
Yeah, on the same. Yeah, Gordon keeps saying Bitcoin is slow and boring, but it's slow and boring by design. That's a statement for people that have been in the Bitcoin space and understand it for a while. For anyone new, it's still pretty exciting and nerve-wracking. But
I think if you compare it to like sort of all the shitcoinery, then yes, it's slow and boring. But if you compare it to essentially any other piece of technology, it's still exceptionally fast. A lot of people like kind of either weren't around or have forgotten or perhaps not had this reflection. But, you know, we only have to go back to say 2017, 2018. That was a big cycle. You know, price of Bitcoin got to nearly $20,000 USD. People were just absolutely going berserk. I had friends on mainstream TV talking about it. Like it blew up. We were selling wallets left, right, and center. It was nuts. It was a crazy, crazy time.
The block wars, the New York agreement with Segwit, all that stuff going on. I remember the price was going up, being nervous as hell, because I'm listening to all these insiders going on, you know, what's going to happen when Bitcoin forks, Bitcoin Cash comes in, and the price was going up, but I was just nervous as hell, thinking, oh, what's all this going to do? So,
Well, to finish off that point, sorry, I was just had something in my throat.
I was covering for you.
Thank you. The big criticism of that era, I guess, was Bitcoin's too slow. It doesn't scale. And you touched on the block wars, and that was certainly one of the big events as well. But, you know, that kind of blew the bubble, you know, like people like, it's not ready. It's, you know, there are all these ICOs promising the world, but they just had come out of nowhere, and like no one had ever built any of these ideas. It was just purely on paper, literally on paper. But, you know, all those criticisms from 2017, 18 of Bitcoin being too slow and not being able to scale, and the price, the transaction fees going through the roof, you know, they were $50 plus for a transaction fee, you know, unheard of, just terrible, you know. But here we are, like fast forward 3, 4, 5 years later, not even. And all of those problems have been solved. Like the Lightning Network has literally solved all those problems. And if you want to transact, you can transact for almost free. Like it's, and no one's making that reflection. Like, okay, all that criticism, you know, and that's 4 years ago. Like we're talking about slow and boring. 4 years ago, like the world's most secure network was, you know, attacked on by not being scalable. And here we are, fast forward, it solved those problems, and everyone's not impressed. Like, why are we impressed? Like, this is incredible. Like it literally fixed it. And you could say that perhaps it's also solved some privacy issues with Bitcoin as well through the Lightning chat. Like we don't even know, like the Lightning Network still has a lot more to come, I think too. But it's just, people are just kind of, here's your new shiny toy, play with it. You get bored after a week, and then they need the next shiny toy. And that's, I guess, what all the crypto nonsense is like, it's just shiny new toys to keep people's short attention spans exercised. Whereas, whilst, you know, Bitcoiners have a very low time preference and are thinking far beyond their years. It's two different, like I was saying, it's two different sports. We're not solving the same problem. Bitcoin is trying to separate money from state, and shitcoins, I don't even know what they're doing. I think they're trying to separate money from consumers, or like, because that's all that tends to happen, right? Like these things get rubbed, these things get pump and dumps, they get scammed, exit scams. Like that's all that happens. Like literally every day. I'm not even like exaggerating. Like every day there is one of these things happening. It's absolutely insanity, but it continues because a few people make money. And then, you know, they sell that idea to the next person. They go, oh, maybe I can also make money. And like, it's just gambling. And, you know, I guess, you know, we do have quite a problem with gambling in Australia. So it shouldn't be in any surprise.
We're coming up on an hour now here, Chris. Now, can you just plug the conference one more time, please, where people can go? And also please tell our audience members where they can follow you, where they can find you. Yeah,
of course. So yeah, April 15th. In Sydney at the University of New South Wales Roundhouse. Bitcoin Alive, you can get all the information and stay up to date with any of the announcements of the program, the new speakers, the sponsors, etc. on our website, www.bitcoinalive.io. You can also find us on social media. I think it's Bitcoin Alive on basically all of them, or just use the search function and you'll come across our branding and our logo. If you're interested in staying in touch with myself, I'm largely on Twitter. If you want to get in touch with me there, you can reach out to my handle, which is Lungdoge, Lungdoge. And no, I'm not interested in Dogecoin. That handle's in relation to my now deceased greyhound, who was a long Doge, and I couldn't get long, so I had to get Lung because someone else had the handle. But yeah, a lot of people. I realize being in this industry, people probably think that I'm like some sort of Dogecoin enthusiast. That I can confirm I am not. But yeah, if you're interested in reaching out, please do so there. You'll probably find me there. Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be an amazing event. Like I was saying, there's going to be something for everyone. It's not just, a really highly skilled expertise, super nerd event. If you are a beginner, there is very much lots of content curated towards beginners. What we found is a lot of people, especially the Bitcoiners, they don't really even care about the content. They just want to get together with other Bitcoiners and chat.
Yeah.
Like when I go to conferences, I mostly don't watch much of the content unless there's someone I'm specifically looking out for. But I'm not sitting there for 8 hours on end. Like I'm going to meet other Bitcoiners, and that's where the magic happens, the socializing and all that sort of aspect. So a lot of the content is actually aimed towards the newer crowd.
That's fantastic.
But of course, there will be content aimed at everyone. Like I said, whether it's energy, payments, there's stuff on self-managed super funds. We've got a lot of content. If there's something that's of interest to you in Bitcoin, we're probably covering it.
That's
so
awesome.
Definitely come along.
Yeah, I've personally changed my holiday plan so I can come to it. So I'm about to buy tickets as soon as we get off. So yeah.
Oh my God! Wow, thank you so much. That is amazing. Oh, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Oh no, well, me too. All right, Chris, is there anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to mention for our audience before we?
No, I don't think so. You'll probably find me hopping on a number of different podcasts around. So maybe I'll be a familiar voice to some people, but if you just want to have a chat about Bitcoin, reach out to me. I'm always happy to. If you want to learn more about the conference, you've got other questions, reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. We're like Bitcoin, we're open source. Happy to fill you in with whatever we can.
Fantastic.
But yeah, we just want to see as many Bitcoiners or people who aren't even Bitcoiners, but perhaps interested coming to this thing and learning why it's so amazing.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a real pleasure. And apologies, Gordon wasn't here today, but we'll, I'll see you in Sydney next month.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on the show, Faris. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.